weather, and you are watching L24 News with me, Abdurrahim Kashur, and these are your headlines. Russian energy giant Gazprom cut off supply to Bulgaria and Poland on Wednesday. A court in military ruled Myanmar convicted the country's former leader, Aung San Suu Kyi, of corruption and sentenced her to 5 years in prison. UNA Chief Martin Griffiths says 2 million children are at risk of starving to death as the Horn of Africa faces one of its worst droughts in decades. It's Russia's most even retaliation to the West's sanctions over the Ukraine crisis. Gazprom says it hasn't received payment from Poland or Bulgaria since April 1st and has halted delivery as Wednesday. In early April, Russian oil production has dropped by 700,000 barrels a day, according to the International Energy Agency. The IEA says that decline could reach 1.5 million barrels a day by the end of April, and about 3 million from May. Supplies from Russia accounts for about 40% of the EU natural gas imports, 50% of Germany's total imports, 70% of Bulgaria's total imports, and 40% of total Polish imports. Earlier in our special coverage, and when asked how would Europe survive without Russian gas, our guest responded as follows.
Well, there is no real alternative. So what they're doing on the Western side with the sanctions is to shoot themselves in the foot and destroy their own economy. And this is a very dangerous situation because this will create a world crisis. We already see a food crisis. We see energy crisis. We see inflation running rampant. And then there is the financial crisis that is coming down because of this. So we will see a very, very dangerous situation in the economy that has to be fixed. And therefore, we need a peace negotiation based on a development policy and a security for all nations. There must be also security for Russia. There must be security for Ukraine. But you cannot demand to have security on the cost of your neighbor. You must have a policy where you find the neighbor to make the best for the neighbor. So the benefit of the other is the way to go to peace. When you have a good neighbor and the good neighbor's economy, then you have a good peace also.
According to Christian Lamberger, German defense minister, Germany will supply Ukraine with anti-aircraft armors as a support despite the cautious policy followed by Germany to avoid amid the war.
Germany will authorize the delivery of GIPA anti-aircraft systems to Ukraine. The announcement was given by the German defense minister on the sidelines of the international meeting at Ramstein US Air Base in Germany on Tuesday.
We decided yesterday to support Ukraine with Gepard anti-aircraft systems, which is exactly what Ukraine needs right now to secure its airspace from the ground. This is what became clear again today. Germany is ready, and during today's conference, we will look into all possibilities how we can further support Ukraine in its courageous and important fight for freedom and for peace.
The announcement is considered as a major turning point in the cautious policy followed so far by Germany in its military support in Kiev. These vehicles will come from the stocks of the German defense industry and not from the limited reserves of the German army.
We will intensively consult on every export request, just like we have done so far. What's important now is that the support for Ukraine comes quickly, that the equipment we deliver is effective, and above all, that is done in coordination with our allied partners.
Around 40 countries are meeting on Tuesday on the Ramstein base at the invitation of the United States. as a step to strengthen the defense of Ukraine. The U.S. Defense Minister Lloyd Austin, who said on Monday that Ukraine can win against Russia if given the right means, hailed Germany's decision to back Ukraine with anti-aircraft armors.
And I wanted to especially welcome a major decision by our German host, as Minister Lambrecht announced just today that Germany will send Ukraine some 50 Cheetah anti-aircraft systems. And yesterday, of course, the British government announced that it would provide Ukraine with additional anti-aircraft capabilities as well. And today, Canada announced that it will send Ukraine 8 armored vehicles.
It's worth noting that Chancellor Olaf Scholz, who has suffered domestic and international criticism for his government's inability to transfer heavy weaponry to Ukraine, has so far justified his cautious policy on this matter by the concern to avoid a direct confrontation between the NATO and Russia.
Russia's defense ministry said on Wednesday its Caliber missiles has struck an arms depot in Ukraine's Zaporizhzhia region, housing weapons from the United States and European countries. The ministry said its air force had destroyed 59 Ukrainian military targets. Russia has warned the United States that large Western deliveries of weapons to Ukraine are fueling the 9-week-old conflict.
Russia's armed forces continue their special military operation in Ukraine. High-precision, long-range, sea-launched Caliber missiles have destroyed hangars on the ground of Zaporizhzhia aluminum plant supplied to Ukrainian troops by the US and European countries. The Russian Air Force's Tactical and Army Air Division hit 59 Ukrainian military facilities overnight.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky met International Atomic Energy Agency General Director Rafael Mariano Grossi on the 36th anniversary of the Chernobyl nuclear disaster in 1986. Mr. Grossi pointed out that there was damage and dark areas near the territory of the power plant, promising a detailed report soon and work to restore the infrastructure there.
The world was once again on the brink of catastrophe because Russian soldiers treated the Chernobyl zone as a normal battlefield, a territory where they didn't even try to worry about the nuclear safety. Russia has no right to weaponize nuclear energy, and moreover, it has no right to blackmail the world by using nuclear weapons. There should be penalties for all of this.
I myself had an opportunity to look at the place, at some of the excavations that were dug in the vicinity of the plant. And we are going to be presenting a report very soon to the IAEA Board of Governors. But it is visible that there is damage, and we are assessing that because our job is to give precise information.
Tensions soaring in the pro-Russian Moldovan separatist region of Transnistria bordering Ukraine after a series of explosions occurred Tuesday at a radio tower. Ukraine responded immediately, accusing Moscow of trying to drag Moldova's breakaway region into its war on Kiev. The President of Moldova, for her part, called for calm and announced measures to strengthen the security in the region.
We are vigilant and we will take all necessary measures to prevent escalation and strengthen the security of our state and the protection of our citizens. We must remain calm. We condemn any provocation and any attempt to lure the public of Moldova into actions that may endanger peace in our country.
We are aware of the explosions that occurred yesterday in Transnistria. We're closely monitoring the situation as we determine what happened. We reiterate the Moldovan government's call for calm in response to these incidents, and we fully support, as you have heard us say before, Moldova's territorial integrity and sovereignty. We respect its constitutionally guaranteed neutrality. We don't know all of the details beyond regarding what transpired yesterday, but we do remain concerned about any potential attempts to escalate tensions.
U.S. Secretary General Antonio Guterres was received by Vladimir Putin in Moscow. The meeting was an opportunity for Mr. Guterres to call on Ukraine and Russia to work with the United Nations to achieve humanitarian corridors, while Vladimir Putin says he hopes to reach agreements on diplomatic track. Nabil Khazini.
A face-to-face meeting between UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres and the Russian President Vladimir Putin. Sitting at his long table facing Antonio Guterres, Vladimir Putin explained that talks with Kiev had been derailed by allegations of atrocities from Russia in the town of Bucha. The Russian president assured that negotiations would still continue between Kiev and Moscow.
Despite the fact that the military operation is ongoing, we still hope that we will be able to reach agreements on the diplomatic track. We negotiate, we don't reject negotiations.
Underneath this bombed workshop, hundreds of civilians are trapped in a scene of one of the worst humanitarian crises and a nearly 2-month conflict in Ukraine. But in this day of diplomacy over Ukraine, Antonio Guterres received an agreement in principle for the evacuation of civilians stuck on the Azovstal industrial site in Mariupol.
I have proposed the establishment of a humanitarian contact group bringing together the Russian Federation, Ukraine and the United Nations to look for opportunities for the opening of safe corridors.
The Russian-Ukrainian negotiations were, however, slowed down by the discovery of many bodies in the Ukrainian zones occupied by the Russian army in the surroundings of Kiev, in particular in the town of Bucha, just before Russia's withdrawal. Ukraine accuses Moscow of killing civilians, something the Kremlin strongly denies.
World leader in consumer drones, the Chinese company DJI has announced to suspend its commercial activities in Russia and Ukraine, becoming one of the few Chinese companies to publicly take such a move. Ukrainian Deputy Prime Minister Mikhail Fedorov wrote a letter last month to DJI accusing the Russian military of using the company's products to target civilians. KFT All on Tuesday demolished a Soviet-era historical monument celebrating the friendship between Ukraine and Russia. Following Moscow's special military operation in the country launched 2 months ago, the head of one of the two figures in the statue collapsed, representing a Russian worker and a Ukrainian worker holding together a Soviet symbol. A court in military rule, Myanmar convicted the country's former leader Aung San Suu Kyi of corruption and sentenced her to 5 years in prison Wednesday in the first of several corruption cases against her. Suu Kyi, who was ousted by the army takeover last year, had denied the allegation that she had accepted gold and hundreds of thousands of dollars given her as a bribe by a top police colleagues. Myanmar leader Aung San Suu Kyi has been charged with at least 18 offenses carrying combined maximum jail term of nearly 190 years. Third, in this case, she is accused of accepting hundreds of thousands of dollars in gold and cash while in power. Suu Kyi was accused of breaking law intended to control the spread of COVID-19. She was also accused of inciting public unrest and breaking the Official Secrets Act. To a different matter now, Singapore executed Malaysian man convicted of drug trafficking on Wednesday despite appeals for clemency on the grounds that he had an intellectual disability. His family said in a case that has drawn international attention, Nagathran Derhaman, 34 years old, had been on the death row for more than a decade for trafficking 44 grams of heroin into Singapore, which has some of the world's toughest narcotics law. His lawyer had filed multiple appeals against his execution, saying he was intellectually disabled. Nikanthrawa's case has drawn global attention to Singapore's continued use of death penalty, particularly in drug trafficking cases, and sparked renewed debate in the city-state itself. The United States says it positively worries that Iran might have nuclear weapons throughout the coming weeks. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken noted Iran has accelerated its nuclear program. He also said that Washington still believes a return to a nuclear deal is the best path with Iran amid a prolonged standoff in talks. According to official Syrian news agencies, 4 Syrian soldiers were killed and 3 others wounded in Zionist airstrike. The Syrian military said that the air defense faced Zionist aggression over the outskirts of Damascus without giving any further details. UN Aid Chief Martin Griffiths says 2 million children are at the risk of starving to death as the Horn of Africa faces one of its worst droughts in decades. Miriam Zian.
UN Aid Chief Martin Griffiths said on Tuesday that close to 2 million children are at risk of starving to death as the Horn of Africa faces one of its worst droughts in decades. Addressing a closed-door donor conference held in Geneva, Griffiths said the organization had only a fraction of the money it needs to respond to the drought. However, donors pledged nearly the entire budget amount of $1.4 billion. Parts of Kenya, Ethiopia, and Somalia are suffering their driest conditions in more than 40 years, and aid agencies are seeking to avoid the repeat of a famine a decade ago that killed hundreds of thousands of people.
The drought has already had 3 failed rainy seasons, and we are approaching the 4th. In fact, we are now halfway through it. Originally, the estimates of the number of people affected at the beginning of this year was between 13 and 14 million. We now estimate this has increased to 15 to 16 million, and if the rains fail, or if they are below average, then this number could increase to 20 million. So we have a very real risk of famine.
The UN's Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the top global climate science authority, said heat waves, droughts, and extreme rainfall would become more frequent in coming decades as temperatures continue to climb.
Khalid Omar Yusef, a famous Sudanese politician and former cabinet minister, was released on bail on Tuesday after an extended detention on corruption accusation, according to a lawyer in his defense team and Reuters. Following this work on a committee trying to undermine the Omar al-Bashir dictatorship, Yusef and other MPs were imprisoned in February following a coup by military leaders who shared power with the civilian coalition they are part of. The prestigious American university Harvard announced on Tuesday that it is dedicating $100 million to make up for its role in slavery. The university said that money will go into a fund that will be used to help address educational and social disadvantages caused by the legacy of the slave trade and racism. A report shows that Harvard employees, including 4 presidents, enslaved more than 70 individuals before slavery was banned in Massachusetts in 1783. According to Farhan Haq, a spokesman for the United Nations, who said that many reports from Moroccan outlets said that Special Representative SRSG Alexander Ivanko stated that an airstrike had hit the Front Polisario convoy of vehicles that were transporting armaments. However, the news were not confirmed yet.
We received a clarification from our peacekeeping mission in Western Sahara, MINURSO, regarding a number of reports in Moroccan media outlets suggesting that Special Representative Alexander Ivanko stated that an airstrike had hit a Frente Polisario convoy of vehicles that was transporting armaments. The Special Representative did not say this. MINURSO was able to visit the site of the alleged attack on the 13th of April and found 3 vehicles, 2 trucks and 1 light vehicle, that appeared to have been hit by air-delivered munitions. MINURSO could not independently confirm if there were casualties in the incident. This information was duly reported to the Security Council on the 20th of April.
Tunisia, which has been deprived of its tourists for many months because of the COVID-19 pandemic, is starting to welcome them back. The deserts, or let me say, deserted since the COVID-19 pandemic. Tunisia has lost 70% of its tourism revenue, which is economic engine. Travelers are finally coming back. Business are happy and optimistic for this year. SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket carrying the Crew Dragon space aircraft called Freedom sits ready for launch at Kennedy Space Center PID 39A at Cape Canaveral on Tuesday. The launch is set for April 27, 2022, and NASA SpaceX Crew 4 missions is the space aircraft and Falcon 9 rocket's fourth crew rotational voyage, which will take up to 6 months to complete. Coming up now to sport, the first round of the UEFA Champions League on Tuesday between Manchester City and Real Madrid ended up with 4-3 for the host Manchester City. The match began and ended with both sides attacking relentlessly. Manchester City held a 2-goal advantage on 3 occasions, only for Real Madrid to halve the defeat, which time the two teams delivered an exceptional spectacle, already placing the game as one of the best matches of the season.
It was a good game of football. Both teams won with an incredible amount of quality players on the pitch and with incredible personality to play both teams.
It's a defeat that leaves us alive going into the second leg at the Santiago Bernabeu. We are still alive. We need to improve on the defensive aspect, but we have, I think, the quality to cause problem for our opponent in Madrid.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's have a reminder for our main top stories. Russian energy giant Gazprom cut off supply to Bulgaria and Poland on Wednesday. A court in military ruled Myanmar convicted the country's former leader, Aung San Suu Kyi, of corruption and sentenced her to 5 years in prison. UNA Chief Martin Griffiths says 2 million children are at risk of starving to death as the Horn of Africa faces one of its worst droughts in decades. Thank you so much for being with us. Take care of yourself and have a blessed evening.